Everyone at those parties always thinks I'm Chris's girlfriend, but the boss seemed to know that I was not. He instigated and then dominated a needlessly lengthy conversation that made no reference to Chris whatsoever. Instead, he talked about his record collection and where he went to college and, for some reason, his childhood dog, a terrier named Tuffy. I suppose he was trying to flirt with me, although I couldn't see it at the time. To be completely honest, I thought he was beneath me. The internet boom may have conferred some kind of sudden cachet to his chosen career, but I wasn't taken in. I strongly suspected that the boss had ended up in charge of an online gaming company only because he'd spent his high school years in the late 1980s locked in a basement somewhere, jacking off and posting to Dungeons & Dragons BBSs. He never seemed, for a second, like someone I couldn't handle. But when the cab pulled up to the curb opposite my apartment later that night, the boss climbed out to let me by, and it took me a minute to right myself. By the time I did, I saw that he'd already shut the taxi door behind me and was passing a rolled-up 20 through the rolled-down front window, telling the driver to keep the change. Without waiting, I started off across the empty street, but the boss followed. Inwardly, I shrugged. If he wanted to walk me to my door, I figured, fine. 3 years back, not long after I moved to New York, I was almost attacked on my way into my apartment. I think I was. At least that's what I tell people. I was walking back from a bar on 7th Street with my neighbors Dave and Rose, and as we passed by the bodega on the corner of our block, I suddenly decided that I needed some milk, so I sent them on without me. I picked up a quart of 2% and a box of cookies, these fancy lattice-patterned butter wafers that my roommate Sebastian likes. And while I waited to pay, I petted the cashier's new kitten, which was sitting on the glass-topped counter next to the chewing gum and rolling papers, meowing softly at me. She was pure black and tiny, with one paw that looked like it had been dipped in something white, and her fur felt like smoke. As I left, I heard the cashier cooing at her. "It is you and I now, gatita, you and I." And for some reason I thought, how romantic. Clearly, I was a little bit drunk. So when I got back to my building, instead of pulling the first of the heavy green metal and glass doors closed behind me like I usually do, I simply stepped inside and let it swing lazily shut. Just as I was about to insert my keys into the second door's lock, I felt a big blast of warm air, like breath, from the street, and I turned around to find a tall, thin, empty-eyed man standing with me in the tiny fluorescent-lit vestibule. My pulse immediately sped to sprinting pace, but I tried hard not to look panicked. I had just finished reading this book by a bushy-mustached private investigator who was always on Oprah at the time. It was basically a manual of what to do in situations such as this. There were something like 17 chapters, but they all boiled down to one simple thesis. Don't be afraid to act like a bitch. Apparently, if you're mouthy enough, a lot of perverts will decide that you're just not worth the bother. So I stood up as straight as I could and very loudly asked the guy what the hell exactly he was trying to do. "It's cool, baby," he said. He slowly raised his right hand, palm open like he was being sworn in, apparently to demonstrate the lack of lethal weapons. "Don't be scared. I'm just here to see my friend." Sorry? "I'm just here to see my friend." "Who's your friend?" I demanded. My voice kept coming out shrill, even though I wanted it to sound calm and confident. His eyes flicked over to the short row of stainless steel mailboxes on the wall, and then back to mine. "John," he said. I was absolutely certain that no one named John lived in my building, but for some reason it seemed like it would be worse to admit that. "Well, why don't you go back outside and buzz John then?" I said, practically yelling. Because following a girl into her building in the middle of the night is scary. I rested my right hand flat across the bank of buzzers, ready to hit every single button hard if he did anything other than turn around and leave. "All right, baby, all right," he said. Without lowering his palm, he pivoted and pushed the outside door open. I watched him start to wander off, then grabbed the handle and jerked it closed behind him. I ran up all 4 flights of stairs to my apartment, put the milk in the fridge, and got right into bed, still breathless, without washing my face or brushing my teeth. My heart was beating hard, and I couldn't seem to make it stop. It was summer, and through my open window I could hear someone below, in the building across the air shaft, fucking. I didn't hear a man, just a woman, moaning theatrically. It sounded, I decided, like she was faking. That's it.